guys, it's Dr. Belinda George here, and I'm missing my author this week. She is with her family. So, Gail, I hope when you watch this later, your grandkids, I hope y'all are having a great time. Well, we're almost near the end of our series with Dallas Tales by Gayle Jones. She's a local author here in Beaumont, Texas, and we've been reading her chapter book right here about her dog named Dallas that goes to Camp Meatball. So we're excited about that. So as people come in, we'll go ahead and get started. If nobody comes in, you can always watch it later. Because if I read to one, I've read to 100. That's how my heart feels. All righty. So Myrtle the steak thief. Our friend Myrtle surprised us and arrived at Camp Meatloaf today. She'll spend the rest of the summer with us. I first met Myrtle back with Mama when we went to visit Sissy and Craig at their lake house one day. I remember Myrtle stole a big ribeye steak right off their porch when Craig was busy inside getting things prepped for dinner. She ate so much she got excuse me. She got sick. Speaking of food, I'm so hungry that I could eat a horse. I hope there is something yummy waiting for me and the gang at Muskrat Lodge tonight. I know Myrtle's hungry too because she's been talking about food all day. That reminds me about the fact that I ate way too much the week before I left for Camp Meatloaf. It was Vacation Bible School that went at Mama's church. She's famous. Let me put my comments on. She's famous for making cinnamon rolls every morning for Vacation Bible School. So I got cinnamon dust up in my nose. All I could smell for days was cinnamon. I ate so much of the icing that had found its way onto the floor that I thought I wouldn't eat anything sweet ever again. Barf. But Mom mailed me a package the other day full of miniature dessert boards for all my pup friends at camp. It was good, but I've never been so sick of chips, cookie crumbs, and something called Swedish fish. What in the world? Are those fish really from Sweden? I remember one time at home when Mama dropped one of those gummy worms on the floor. Wowzer, I snatched that thing and ran off with it, thinking it must be a small snake. I shook it and tossed it into the air. But as soon as it left my mouth, I caught a bit of the sweet taste. A sweet snake? I realized quickly that it was just a worm candy. I like gummy worms, but I need pizza bones. That's what I'm really hoping for pizza night. Those kids only eat a bite or two of that wonderful pizza, so plenty of leftovers should be left for us. Now that we have a resident steak thief in camp this year, I'm thinking we'll have plenty of pizza bones and maybe a surprise treat or two. We needed to elect another camp chairman for the week, and we voted to nominate Bear. Even though he's not the oldest pup at camp, King said it was okay to make Felis our camp storyteller. I can't wait until Fee tells a scary story to tell how Myrtle will react, I told Foxy. Shh, Foxy replied, laughing. Don't tell Myrtle about the scary stories. She'll up and leave. Hey, here comes Coco. Wait a minute. Is that Coco? I mean, it looks like Coco, but most of her hair is red. As Coco came near us, we could see that her entire head and ears were a shade of dark red. Coco, why do you have a red head? I asked innocently. Well, she replied, last night the pantry was open in the kitchen at Muskrat Lodge, and I thought I was able to reach the cookies. Instead, I accidentally got into the strawberry punch powder. I knocked over the whole canister and it dumped right on top of my head. I'm so embarrassed. We tried not to laugh, but she looked so ridiculous. As chairman, Bear chose for all the pups to stay overnight tonight out at the old barn on the edge of the campgrounds. Not many people knew about it because it hadn't been used in years. It has a tall front porch and is nestled in a thicket of cedar trees barely visible from the main camp. Foxy and the other members of the Fab 14 didn't want to walk so far, so they decided to stay behind. Luke is getting on in years, and we didn't want him to overheat, but he decided to come with us anyway. When we arrived at the barn, we could see we had our work cut out for us. It was a bit scraggly out there. So we had some clearing to do in order to make it comfortable. Bear did a lot of the heavy digging and scratching underneath the old porch where there were lots of weeds and brush growing. Hank and Willow were a big help, toting all of the scrub to a ravine and dropping it over the side. Coco was being Coco, off chasing an evening butterfly, while I told myself she was probably still trying to overcome that redhead she showed up with her today. Poor thing. Well, hello, Nathan. Hello from Indiana. I like when you all tune in and love when you write comments. I love reading those. Welcome. And welcome to the others that are joined as well. When the work was done, Myrtle volunteered to scout out scraps for our dinner. Felix wandered off to ponder what story he would tell at the campfire. I had a feeling it was going to be a doozy and a whale of a tale. By sunset, here came Myrtle dragging a big bag of food. Wow, Myrtle did not disappoint. I've never seen such a haul in my life. When it was time to eat, Myrtle proudly stepped forward with her bag of goodies. Looks like I was right about that girl. She was able to go places the rest of us have never been able to go. Her climbing abilities are nothing short of incredible. The kids had just left Muskrat Lodge, so she climbed right in the open window and jumped on top of the table. She filled a plastic bag with scraps of pizza, corn dogs, and apple wedges. Then she snagged some extra slices of rat meatloaf that the Muskrat Lodge cooks had prepared for the rest of the camper pups for dinner. I later learned that Myrtle had overheard me raving about rat meatloaf and wanted to impress me with a few slices. When I first heard about rat meatloaf, I thought that goofy stuff would be disgusting. But I've acquired a real taste for it at Camp Meatloaf. It's so delish. After Bear gave thanks, everyone dug into the feast. Dinner is served. Myrtle, having outdone herself for dinner, found extra sticks for the campfire afterwards. We got our fire started and found a place to lie down. Felix walked around checking on each pup, then went over by the fire and let out a big old howl. One thing I've learned since I've been camping is that sound travels across the water like a megaphone. I was thinking they could hear that howl all the way across Inks Lake to Camp Ritzy Blitzy Bitsy. Myrtle perked up and asked quietly, "What's that howl all about? It's creepy." Why did Felix do that? I tried to explain to Myrtle that we've learned to notify the coyotes when we're near and remind them that we won't be invading their territory. Myrtle took a big gulp and swallowed hard. I mean, what would happen if we, accidentally crossed into their territory? She wanted to know. I quickly reassured her that we would never let that happen. We were always very careful to avoid coyote territory, I said, but I was thinking to myself, except when we got lost the other day, no need to give Myrtle those details. But then it was pitch black outside. The old barn was so far out in the wilderness that there was not a speck of light in the sky, except for the orange glow from our campfire. Felix began telling his story for the night, but then we heard a small whimper. Felix thought it must be Luke and figured he was tired and not feeling well. "Luke, you okay?" Felix asked into the darkness. Luke spoke up and said, "I'm fine. That sound you heard, that did not come from me." Just then, we all heard the whimper again, and I told everyone to be quiet. Amid the still of the night, with only the crackle of the campfire, crickets, and an occasional hoot owl, we heard the sound again. There was nothing out there, and it sounded almost like a kitten, but that possibility was not likely since it was such a remote place. I was beginning to rethink Bear's decision to select a place this far out from camp. Bear crept silently toward the sound, and other pups followed, curious as to what it might be. We all gathered around a hollow in the ground under the roots of a big tree and peered inside, not knowing what to expect. No, it can't be. I told myself as I focused my eyes on the brown blur inside the hollow, please tell me this is not what I'm thinking it could be. Was it a camper pup like us? No way, not this far out. Then Bear asked the rest of the pups to stand back a bit, as whatever was inside that hollow had started to make its way forward. Merciful heavens. It was a tiny coyote pup. So now we're into a wild pup. This should get interesting. Gayle, I wish you were here. At first, we were hoping that the brown bundle was a dog, but those pointy ears did not lie. It was a coyote pup, all right. We were in coyote territory. This realization meant that we were all in deep trouble and in immediate danger, so we had to make quick decisions really fast. Do we leave the poor coyote pup all alone and run for the hills? Do we try and nudge some of our food in the hollow for nourishment? I couldn't stand the idea of this pup starving to death. Sophia and I decided to see what was left over after our dinner. Maybe the tiny pup might be able to eat by myself. We thought because we could not touch him, even coyote pups can carry the daily rabies virus, so we could not take a chance. Hi, HB Frizzle, a coyote pup. Hi, Liv. How exciting it is. I couldn't stand the idea of this pup starving to death. Sophia and I decided to see what was left over after our dinner. Maybe the little pup might be able to eat by itself, we thought, because we could not touch him. Even coyote pups can carry the deadly rabies virus, so we could not take a chance. I needed to reread that one. Maybe the coyote mom will come for her pup, suggested Hank. Another reason to not touch him, Luke warned. More than likely, the coyote mom had been in the process of moving the pups to a safer location far away from us when she heard us coming earlier that evening. That mom could only move one pup at a time, and she probably didn't have time to retrieve the second pup. I remembered I tucked away some rat meatloaf from dinner, so I retrieved a few bites about the size of a small meatball. Carefully, I pushed the rat meatballs to the entrance of the hollow with my nose, eyeball to eyeball. The pup looked to me like he was only a few weeks old, so I hoped he could nibble a bite or two. I returned to the group and we talked about what to do next. We knew that we must pack up and move to another place for the night. It wouldn't be safe out there. Bear decided we needed to retreat closer to the camp and sleep under the porch at the big house. While we packed up everything silently, I could tell everyone was pretty shaken about the thought of coyotes lurking behind every bush out in the darkness. Myrtle was just about to freak out because it was her first night at camp and all the talk of coyotes had her spooked. Willow was the brave one, and now Willow was the brave one now and said swiftly to Myrtle, "I'll be here for you, Myrtle. Don't be afraid." Then Luke, older and wiser than most, drew on his wisdom and reminded us to mark the trail back to his post. This spot. If we don't come back to check on this little pup, he might not make it, he said. Luke suggested that we use the bits of fall that were still stuck on some of the pizza bones. He said we would wrap those fall bits around the bushes on the trail so that we could find our way back tomorrow. We did that as we went along. And when we were finally safe under the porch of the big house, we all breathed a sigh of relief for the night. No one could sleep, so we began to discuss what we could possibly do to help a baby coyote pup survive until his mother returned. "Ice cream," Hank suggested, licking his lips. "Of course," I agreed. After all, the ice cream is made from milk. Hopefully, we could find some small vanilla ice cream cups in the Muskrat Lodge kitchen. It was not exactly coyote formula, but it was the best we could possibly do. The kids normally have ice cream at lunch many days, and there were always a few who, for whatever reason, chose to not eat their ice cream. Myrtle to the rescue. She's fast and sure-footed, just a pup for this important job. We hardly slept through the night, and the morning light broke early. "Okay, pups," Bear said to us, "up and at it. We've got work to do today and a baby coyote to check on and feed." When lunch was over for the campers, Myrtle was able to snag 6 untouched cups of ice cream in the trash outside the back door of the kitchen. Bear decided that he and I would go alone to take the ice cream out to the wild coyote pup. Bear is ferocious and I am fast, so we quietly and carefully found our way back out to the old barn in a tiny hollow, following the trail we marked. We didn't want to spend but a few minutes out there, since we would be very well in the gaze of a pack of coyotes right that second. We just didn't know. Just as we reached the hollow, we heard the coyote pup loudly whimpering. "Poor thing. I'm sure he's really starving by now," I told Bear. We pulled the lid off a few cups of ice cream and lined them up to roll into the hollow. Very gently, I scooted the first cup into the hollow, hoping against hope that I would land right side up. Angels must have been watching over that coyote pup and us, because it landed perfectly right in front of him. Immediately, the wild pup began licking it. Bear gave me a paws up, and we decided we would roll one more cup into the hollow. The second cup scored a perfect landing also, and we left the other 4 cups of ice cream in the event Mama Coyote was nearby. Before we left, we carried over a few limbs to place over the top of the hollow to protect him from hawks and the strong sun. We made plans to check on him again later that evening. Bear and I raced back to the camp to give our report to the other pups. They were all excited that we were successful in our first feeding. Willow and Myrtle were anxious to explore the camp, so off we went to seize the day. Those two ran ahead way out front, and Felix whispered to me that it would be a good day to jump on the blob. I agreed. It would be a perfect activity to relieve the tensions we were all feeling from caring for this pup. Off to the lake. And if we'd known how stressful the next hours would be, maybe we would have never have gone to Inks Lake. And now we're meeting Aztec. I don't know if you guys remember Aztec, but you're about to be reintroduced to him or meet him for the first time if you're just tuning in. And this is our last chapter for tonight, chapter 19. And then we will have probably 2 Tuesdays and we'll be done with this great book. Meeting Aztec. Those lazy days of summer were where we could do whatever we wanted to do, came to a quick end with the discovery of the wild coyote pup. I guess it was sort of like having a baby. There was something to check on every other minute of the day. We spent a lot of time deciding what the poor thing could eat. After sneaking around the back door of Muskrat Lounge, we found a couple of raw eggs that weren't broken. I know, another miracle. The cook had set out the egg carton on the garbage can lid, and it just happened to have eggs still intact inside. And the bonus was that the cook had put the egg carton in a plastic garbage bag with a handle that Bear hung around his neck for transporting out to the hollow where our baby coyote was sleeping. The other pups wanted to go with us to feed him, but we assured them we would be back quickly. I hoped they wouldn't get into any mischief while we were gone. I didn't know coyotes eat raw eggs, but let's see. We left Luke in charge, but he was old and didn't hear so well. Bear and I followed our trail back out to the tiny hollow we found, and it just like we left it. We rustled open the egg carton and placed the egg on the ground. Bear cracked the shell with just a bit of his paw and rolled the egg down to the pup, who was obviously hungry. But the eggshell was not open wide enough for the pup to lick the egg inside. Hurry, Bear said. Get a stick. I found a long, heavy stick and brought it to Bear. He took it in his mouth and carefully poked at the shell just enough until the coyote pup could suck the egg into his mouth. Another successful feeding. We had to go get back to the other pups to see what they were up to. You never know what a bunch of young pups will do while you're gone. We'll ride back at camp to find Luke was fast asleep and not a pup in sight. Wake up, Luke, I said, poking at him with my paw. Where's everybody? Luke had no clue and no idea how long he'd been sleeping. Bear and I ran to the lake, and on the way we could hear splashing and barking. All the pups were having a big old time in the water, and we decided to join them. After swimming and playing, we all came out, shook the water off our coats, and found some big shade trees to sleep a while. Dogs need their sleep just like a bunch of teenagers do. We asked Hank to stay awake and on alert just in case we had some bad weather pop up. Or, heaven help us, any snakes decided to cruise into our nice hangout spot. There's nothing like a good nap after a swim. Is there? There's really not. I was fast asleep, dreaming about all the goodies we could likely eat for dinner. It was barbecue night at Muskrat Lodge, and the feast would be amazing. Suddenly, I woke up to find Hank standing right over me, excited to the point of frenzy. What's going on? I asked him, but Hank was talking too fast that I could hardly understand him. He was half talking and half pointing up at the sky with his paw. Slow down. Use your words, I reminded Hank. Finally, Hank said that he heard several huge hawks squawking in the area near our coyote pup. There was no time to waste. I shook Bear awake and told him what was going on. He called all pups on deck, giving orders to follow him quickly up to the hollow. Hawks can pick up a small dog if they want to. Bear cautioned and paired up the smaller cousins to run beside the bigger dogs. Bear gave the charge, and we all followed. As we neared the area, Bear told us to begin barking the most ferocious bark we could manage. I had to admit that I was nervous at the thought of those big hawks with their sharp claws. Then I saw 3 of them on the ground near the pup's den, ready to feast on the helpless guy. But not if we could help it. At that moment, Bear and Felix began making the scariest growls I'd ever heard come out of their bodies. Us little dogs were yapping our heads off, but those old sister hawks weren't budging. Mercy now, what do we do? The hawks made a familiar weird cackling sound that signaled they were ready to pounce on their prey. Was the prey going to be one of us or the pup? I didn't know for sure, so I started looking for a way out of this predicament. It was time for another one of those quick prayers again, which I belted out just between God and I. God, I praised and closed my eyes. Give us favor in the situation to overcome the evil before us. Just about the time I opened my eyes, I saw a new terror. Oh my goodness. A pack of coyotes, 10 strong, was bearing down on us. And then a funny thing happened. Instead of charging literal us, those coyotes ran right past and charged the hawks. In an instant, the angry hawks took flight and left. Woo! But then the coyotes turned to face us. What if they think we kidnapped their pup? I was still wondering that when the coyotes began howling, the weirdest howl I'd ever heard. This is it, I told myself. Then the largest coyote stepped forward and let out a blood-curdling howl. I should have been scared, but somehow his howl sounded very familiar to me. I am Aztec, the chief coyote on this mountain, he said to us. King and I made a pact to not invade each other's territory several years ago. All summer, you have kept that pact faithfully, only breaking it when you were lost. I go. He remembered that day. Was he mad? Aztec, however, didn't seem angry and continued. You are such a very responsible pack of pups. We have watched you all summer and seen the respect you have, not only for each other, but also for our land. We also know the respect you have for our pack. You have tried very hard not to cross our territory. Regrettably, one of our coyotes crossed over into yours. It was time for her to give birth, and she was too far from home. She didn't anticipate you would arrive at the barn so soon. We took great notice of the gentle care you showed that lone pup. You went to great lengths to provide food for this little one, and today you risk your very lives to save him. Bear was taking in every word as Aztec continued. I've heard it said that there's no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. Today we cease to be enemies. Forevermore, it will be known within our coyote pack that you pups and those who come after you will be welcome in this great place. We can never repay you for saving the life of one of our own. Peace to you, my friends. With that, Bear sat back on his hindquarters and reared his two front legs in the air as a symbol of thanks. To my surprise, Bear then invited all the coyotes to our campfire tomorrow. Aztec nodded. Thank you, as he and his crew retrieved the coyote pup from the hollow and made their way up the hill. We weren't sure that they would really come visit, but we would have to be ready just in case. Oh my goodness, I said I was going to read the last one, but I have to read this. It was the last one, but I have to read this one. Chapter 20, Coyotes in the Campfire, because I have to know what happened. Later that night, we wondered if the coyotes would show up to our campfire near the old barn. Bear assigned all the pups a job to get ready just in case. Hank and Willow would be in charge of making sure we would have enough stones for the campfire ring. Bear, Coco, and Felix would drag nearby limbs into a pile for burning, and I was going with Myrtle to gather some pine straw for kindling. King found a few paper bags we could tuck in to help start the fire well before sunset, since we did have to use a magnifying glass. Lacey the cat said there was no way she was meeting the coyotes tonight and stayed in camp. Luke volunteered to be our greeter. He was the perfect one for that job, and he will show them the special places we made for them to sit on the side of the campfire. Coco, Myrtle, and I have assembled quite the assortment of goodies for our campfire feast. We have pizza bones, leftover corn dog bites, chicken biscuits, and of course, my favorite, rat meatloaf. I think our coyote friends will love it. About sunset, I saw the coyotes approaching from the hill across from Snaggletooth Rock. Before meeting Aztec, I had not seen a coyote up close and personal. They are actually so beautiful, but I had some immediate concerns. First, I told King I was worried about getting rabies from the coyote guests. He said there had never been a case of rabies on this hill. Since all of us pup cousins were vaccinated each year for rabies, I knew we'd be okay for this meeting tonight, but I wanted to make sure. However, I must say right now that this meeting tonight was one that must not be repeated in ordinary circumstances. Normally, dogs and coyotes did not mingle or come in contact with each other. Coyotes are wild, and as such, they are always on defense against anyone who might be considered a predator. Normally, the coyote would consider dogs as predators, but Mama says dogs like me are domesticated, which is a big word for being house pets that no longer understand danger so much. All I knew was that tonight's meeting was going to be highly unusual. When the coyote group arrived, Luke barked, "Welcome to our camp, Aztec." Then he escorted Aztec and his fellow coyotes to their spots by our fire. They were given the very best places with a great view of some fireworks. We heard the Camp Meatloaf staff should be shooting later. The coyotes were a little jumpy at first, as they were not used to being around us pups. As Bear had instructed beforehand, we all sat very until until our guests began to feel more comfortable around us. Bear greeted the coyotes next with a warm welcome. He had wisely organized all the food so that the coyotes' eating spot was away from the pups on the other side of the fire so they could relax and eat. "Will you say the blessings over our food?" Bear asked me. I was thrilled to do so. After I finished praying, I told Aztec he could tell the coyotes it was time to eat. I could see by the way they dug into the food that they were pretty excited and the special treats we had provided. About that same time, the fireworks started. The coyotes were alarmed at first, but we assured them it would be fine. The sound was not bad since we were way outside of camp at the old barn. Our guests seemed amazed by both the food and the fireworks show. As the fireworks drove to a close, some of the younger coyote pups were settling in for a bit of a quick nap. I think the older coyotes finally realized for the first time on this very special night that there could be peace on earth. Friends can come together, take part in a meal, be nice to one another, and see how wonderful this world can be. Like my mom always says, we must look out for one another and help each other when we can. It's true. When we really get to know each other, they turn out to be just like us for the most part. Meeting new friends and understanding what makes them different is special. But in many ways, the best lesson is coming to understand how love can heal lots of things. Tonight, I felt the love, not only among my pup friends and cousins, but also from our respected new friends, Aztec and his coyote pack. So far, my summer at Camp Meatloaf has been high drama and full of lessons we'll soon not forget. That's what camp is supposed to be about, I guess. But there is still so much more to come. In chapter 21, it's the love story. So my biggest takeaway from here probably is the last part, and I got choked up a little bit, and sometimes in life you just hit that wall and you keep hitting that wall. And I needed to read that last chapter. So my biggest takeaway from this is that I'm going to encounter people who are like me for the most part, but may have differences. And it's not always skin color, it may be attitudes or personalities or their beliefs. And not only me, but everyone, we have to put that aside and then find out what your purpose is. And I think the dogs are finding their real purpose of being at Camp Meatloaf, and the coyotes are being respected. They were seen as villains, but they really weren't. And so thank you, Gayle, for that lesson in that book. Guys, we'll be back next Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. sharp. This is my little hoodie roby thing that Tony McPherson brought me. So thank you, Tony. And I love the unicorn. Guys, remember, if nobody else tells you, Dr. George loves you. See you guys next Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Central Time. Love you guys. Good night.